Today I want to show how to do a pattern transfer. This is a really easy way to get an image that you want on your canvas without having to actually paint it on there. And I've showed before how to use graphite, which is one way, of course, to transfer a pattern onto your canvas. And I have my little canvas board right here. This is actually not even a regular canvas. This is just a piece of cardboard that comes out of the back of a picture frame. It's the matte part of the picture frame. So this is just a thick cardboard, and that'll work fine for what I'm doing today. And it's sturdy enough where it's not going to warp when the paint gets on there. Even though these are water-based acrylic paints, it'll be okay. This is a nice sturdy cardboard, as you can see. But it's not the corrugated kind, so it's nice and smooth. And actually has two sides. It has the gray or the charcoal color on the back, and then it has the white on the other side. I think I'm just going to, because of the type of painting I'm going to do today, I want to use the light side. So I'll be using this one. And I want to do a sun painting, so I pulled out some colors that remind me of the sun. So I've got different shades of oranges and reds, and I got my whole palette right here. These two neon ones are a lot of fun, and they don't look all that bright in the palette, but on the canvas, once they mix with some of the other colors, like the yellow especially, when you get these two mixed together, they do look really cool on the white backing. So you get to see what those look like. So before I do the pattern transfer, I'm just going to get this whole white canvas board colored sort of almost like a patchy, almost like a camo or tie-dye look with the different colors. I'm not going to do any pattern. It's just going to be sort of random. And I don't like to wash my brush in between. So I'll tell you what I mean. I'll be using one of these medium size brushes today, but I like to sort of start with the lighter colors. And then when I want it to be blended, when I want this to be a nice blended look, I just don't wash my brush in between. I'll leave a little trace of the same color on the brush, and then I just switch to the next color, and it allows for some blending, and you'll see what that looks like. So figure out what brush I want to use. For something like this, I think I'll use one of these brushes. Nice and soft. It lets me do some smaller shapes, but also if I press it hard enough, I can get a wider bristle there. So I think I'll do this one. And I start with little patches of the colors. So whatever I'm going to do that's yellow, which is the color I'm starting with, because it's in my opinion it's the lightest color of these. I'm going to start with yellow, and I'm going to do patches of yellow wherever I want it. So once I'm done with yellow, that's it. No more going back to yellow, because once I get red or pink or orange on my brush, it'll be hard to turn that back to yellow without washing the brush. And the look that I want on this particular painting is that I want it to blend. So I don't want it to all turn into one color. I don't want that much blending. I just want to see some subtle blends in there. So I'll start with the yellow. You'll see patches of yellow popping up, and then I will sort of branch out from there, filling in some of those gaps with other colors, one at a time, of course, and then figure out not too much of the bright. I like to use these sparingly. So I don't want to be too shocking with the super fluorescent orange or pink, but I'll throw in a little bit wherever I feel it needs some, so a little bit subtle with the brighter colors. So let's get started filling out our canvas. I'm just wrapping this up as I'm coming around to the last little bit of white that I have here on the canvas board. So this corner has some white, and this center area here has a little patch of white. So I'm just going to go in there and finish that up and kind of explain what I'm doing while I finish. So I have a pretty dry brush. I'm not using a lot of paints. I'm barely dipping in the paints. You can kind of tell that as I'm moving my brush, I'm going in a circular motion and I'm pressing pretty hard. But I'm not tearing up the bristles. I'm still kind of going the direction the bristles want to go, so I'm not forcing them in a funny direction that's going to bend them. They're still, you can tell, in good shape and staying straight. And then as I'm sort of digging in and doing those swirls and blending the colors, I'm trailing over towards the lighter onto the yellow, the big patches of yellow that I did. So I started with a lot of yellow and I'm sort of starting to kind of eat it up with the other colors as I'm moving on to it. And that's the plan. You want to start with more so that you can cover over it to have that overlap area where it blends. And so wherever it has this hard line, like right here, you can definitely tell a big difference between this color and that color, and there's not a lot of blending there. That's where I come in with some of a medium color that's something in between the yellow and the darker red and pink mixture that I was making, and just kind of come in right along that crease in the same sort of circular motion and just sort of clean it up and soften that little edge a little bit by creating a bit of a blend there. And the more you swirl it, the more you go over it, the more it will blend until you're happy with it, just like that. I wanted this to look like give the idea or the impression of sort of a sunset look, and that's why the colors are these right here. But I didn't want to do a traditional sunset painting. You just see so many of those. I wanted this one to be a little different. So you'll see this one's going to be really fun and whimsical, and it's not going to look like your traditional silhouettes or palm trees and things like that, because you see so many of those. We'll do something a little bit different. So now the whole thing is covered, very much like a tie-dye look. I really wish you could tell how bright this is, because in person it's a whole lot brighter than it's going to be on film, and so it really doesn't do it justice to show it to you like this with the shadow casting on it. But this is a really super bright painting, and I just added a couple extra coats here just by dabbing on some of the neon pink here. It's this one right here, this neon sizzling pink from Americana brand. And I just dab some of it on there, not too thick, but thick enough so you'll be able to see that nice bright color, and just in a couple of strategic spots, so it didn't create a pattern, just here and there where I felt that it needed some. And I'm going to show a little trick. I'm going to throw my brush in the water, and I'm going to grab a different brush. I'm going to grab a flat brush, just something like this will do. And I hate to waste any of my craft supplies. I hate to waste paint, especially because some of these, I don't buy a whole lot of these because I only use a tiny bit when I'm painting with neon. I'm only going to do a tiny bit of neon. I'm not going to do a whole neon canvas. That's way too bright. It's just meant for those little fun details that you can throw in there for something that'll just draw your attention to it. So I try to save these, and I don't want to waste any. So if I have any paint that's left in the well, and like the dark orange, I really didn't get to it, and some of this pink, which is also a nice color here, this apple barrel, I'll just scrape them out of the wells and put them back into the bottles. Of course, you want to wash in between, but I'll show how I do that. So I just take the cap off, and it seems really cheap, but you don't want to waste your paints if you've gone out of your way to buy these colors and you like them and you plan on using them in the future. Why waste them? Why just pour them down the drain? So just scoop them up with, and I just use this brush because it's easy. You can get a lot of it when you scoop it up with your brush, and then you can also brush it off into the bottle easily. And it's nice, it's really clean. It doesn't make a mess. I'm just wiping it right off into the bottle, and that's good enough. I won't worry about the rest of it. But if this is probably a tiny amount compared to what sometimes I'll see go to waste. But if you're painting with your kids and they will want to squeeze the paint out, sometimes they'll just fill these wells up all the way because they're having fun squeezing the bottle. And if they don't use it all, you definitely want to save that paint, and that's the way you can do it. You just unscrew the cap and then wipe it right back in. So I'll set that aside. All right, so for the pattern transfer, I have, since this is an 8x10 canvas board that I painted, I have a piece of paper that I trimmed to 8x10 size, and just any kind of paper, it doesn't matter what color it is. And I'm going to just freehand this, but you can print something out. You don't have to freehand it. You could freehand it with the pencil first and then go over it with the Sharpie, but I'm just going to do this real quick and draw a sun, the type of sun that I want to go on the background that we just created. So I want this to be like a fun look. I want this to be, you know, kind of simple, but something that can really go well with this background that we did. So since the background's kind of fun and bright and patchy, I'm going to do like a kooky sun that's got a swirl in the middle, and well, you'll see how the puffy paint helps us to create a really neat look on that bright background, especially because we're going to be using black puffy paint, so use a color that contrasts really well with the background that you have. So if this was a really dark background, if I was doing almost like a night sky or a galaxy and you saw a lot of dark blues and dark purples and black colors in here, almost like this same look, only imagine it with darker colors and blues, then I would probably use a white puffy paint, and I could do like a moon on a background like that. But I will show you what I'm going to do here. So I'm just going to freehand a sun. So you don't want to have a whole lot of detail in this picture, and I also want to leave a lot of space in between my lines, and you'll see why. Because this puffy paint is going to spread out, and so imagine these lines getting 3-4 times thicker than they are. You don't want the lines touching, so you leave a lot of space in between. So I'll leave the center like that, and then I want my little rays, and these can be shaky because of the style, because of the art style. They can be shaky. You don't have to measure these. You can go all the way to the edge if you want, and maybe some are shorter than others, whatever. Make this one short too. I'm just, as I'm going around the circular part in the middle, I'm just kind of keeping my edge a little rounded also. They're not straight lines here, they're a little bit rounded. So let's just do something like that. Okay, so that's going to be our sun, but it's not going to look exactly like that because we're going to go over these lines now right on the paper with puffy paint. Make sure you give it a good shake, because remember, if you're leaving them upright like this, then all the paint is at the bottom and it's thick paint, so it will stay there. You just give it a shake till you can feel the weight of it going down to the nozzle. That way you don't have to keep on shaking it or worry about it having an air bubble in there and then sort of sneezing all over the picture you're trying to do here. And just go over all of your lines with the puffy paint. You may want to practice this first, just like I talked about in the stained glass video, because this stuff will kind of surprise you how it comes out. It could just come out fast, and so you have to get that pressure just right as you're squeezing, or just go slow. It's okay. If this looks shaky, that's okay, because that's the art style we're going for. So just take your time with it and practice on paper if you need to before you put it on your design. Puffy paint over all the Sharpie lines. I changed the design a little bit as I was going and decided if I wanted some of these to be a little longer, a little shorter. I just adjusted that as I went, and I had some little lines here just for effect. I wanted to see what that would look like. Sometimes I just try stuff at the last minute. It wasn't in the plan, but I wanted to see what that will look like when I flip it over, because that's what we're about to do. We're going to bring back our canvas board. All right, set that down nice and flat. Get these paints out of the way. All right, and then we're just going to make sure we're centered, and we're going to flip this over right on top of the canvas board. So my whole right here, I've just flipped it over. The paint is so thick that it's not going to go anywhere, so don't worry about it dripping off. And then your paint is going to be slippery, so gently set it down. I just was using my fingertips to hold it, and then just sort of, once I was right where I needed to be, I just set it down. You don't want to let it shift now, because now the paint is touching your canvas. And then you just want to sort of tap it all over. I'm not going to smush my hand flat because I have way too much paint on here, and it's going to lose your design. You're just going to sort of gently tap it to make sure it's touching, making contact with the canvas, and we'll flip it over to reveal the transfer in just a second. I also went a little thicker on some parts of the lines on the swirl here in the center because I wanted that look. And you can tell by where it's sort of starting to soak into the paper, the puffy paint. You can kind of tell how thick those lines are. You can even, if you're curious, you can lift it up and see what it looks like. But here's the big reveal. Flip them over. I really don't mind if some of the lines are not totally connected. That's fine. I think that would look cool if it's like that. So just lift them up carefully and do not let it drop. You want to lift it up and then quickly set it somewhere away so it doesn't fall back down or fall on you, because now you have this piece of paper that has a bunch of wet paint on it. Cool thing is you could use this again because this has plenty of paint on it. I could even stamp it again if I had 2 canvas boards ready to go. So you could just right away immediately flip this over onto another one. Of course, one will have more paint than the other. This one will almost look like if you were to stamp a rubber stamp again. It's not as dark as the first time, but you could still use it if you want to get one more use out of this. But I'll just set this aside with the wet side up so it doesn't touch anything. The puffy paint takes a while to dry. I'll give this 24 hours before I'm sure that it's nice and dry, because you can see the raised areas where there was a lot of it gathering, like right in this area right here. There's quite a bit, so that part's going to take a while. But this is a look that you can't really achieve very easily with just a paintbrush without it looking forced. And this looks so natural the way it was just stamped on there, and this little fun crooked looking sunshine, and it's just different. It doesn't look like your everyday sunset painting, but it gives you the same feel because of the colors. This is something you could do on t-shirts or tote bags. You lay your shirt out nice and flat, make sure there's no wrinkles, make sure it's not creased or folded, and you can put some cardboard in between so that the fabric on the front and back of the shirt doesn't stick together, because when the paint soaks into it, it can sort of start to soak into the other side, and then once it's dry, you'll see that your shirt is stuck together. So you can put some cardboard or paper in between, and you can do a pattern transfer right onto your shirt. You can write a word. Just make sure and be aware that when you flip it, it's going to be reversed. So if you're writing a word, you have to write it backwards, or just write it with Sharpie on some thin paper that you can see through. That way you can write it backwards where you can see through it, and then flip it over, and it will look straight in the right direction on the front of your shirt. But we do these all the time on all kinds of different surfaces, and it's really fun, and it's a way to get a different kind of look. And this was so fast. This was really quick. A simple design can turn into something really cool like this.